Welcome to the EarthWorks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon with many of the turf friends we've met over the past 35 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons for another EarthWorks Podcast, and today it's the EarthWorks Podcasters together for the first time. Have we ever done this? I don't think we've ever done the Podcasters, have we? So
I think we have.
The three of us represent the EarthWorks Podcast for the last 286 episodes. Jack Higgins, who likes to take claim for the podcast.
Full credit.
Rightfully so.
Full 100% credit. Without any help, zero, none.
It was your idea, and I really didn't know what the hell you were talking about, but I said, yeah, that's a good idea. This all started, and I think I'll refresh everybody's memory. It all started during COVID when I, as the owner of a company, thought we were about to go bankrupt because everything was shut down and we weren't going to be able to communicate or talk to anybody in our client base. And you said, hey, I got an idea. Let's do a podcast. Great idea. What's a podcast? This was actually, we were ahead of the curve. Today you can't throw a dead cat without hitting a podcast. Right?
Well, and credit to our man, Josh Saunders, because he was also an early adapter that was game right from like word one. It was like, hey, bro, this is an idea. Would you talk with me? And he was like, yeah, I'll do it.
He jumped right in. Yeah, he was our first podcast.
Yeah. So,
and then of course we have Kevin Hicks, who is the greatest voice in podcasting history, and I've always been very jealous of. But I love listening to your podcasts because of that.
Next to my hero, Mike Rowe, of course.
Right, exactly. That's your hero. But it's kind of cool the way we've been able to do this because Kevin, you really get into 25 years as a superintendent all over the West Coast. Can really sit down and talk to guys one-on-one with what's going on. I, on the other hand, just basically laugh a lot and talk to old friends that I've known for 30 years in the industry. And Jack, just some of the greatest opening lines of podcast history.
I'm trying.
It has always made me laugh, which is always very funny. But yeah, so we're at.
So I got that going for me. Is that what you're saying?
I'm giving you credit. I think it's. What was the one you just did that I loved? Outside.
It was
Jack and.
It was in Central Park, I think. At least I liked it. I liked that one. Oh, no, the Jack and Shackamaxon.
It was Jack and Shackamaxon, which was a great podcast. And I loved the opening one. And you made him laugh, which was even better.
Yeah, I totally surprised him.
And you had been working on that opening for a while, which was great.
It had been rolling in my head, but we had cruised around together for, like an hour before that. And then, just normal talking. And then it's like, cut, boom.
Here we go.
So I turned that on. I'm like, oh my God, that's classic. It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, you get inspired. That's what's fun about this podcast is like you get inspired getting out on the property, and you want to kind of like you want to pull that right through the microphone and let everyone hear it and see it because that's what's fun about these conversations. Like you get to really take in that whole landscape, that whole turf thing, and really kind of jaw dropping off.
And I love the fact that you're out there and getting mobile and not just sitting in the studio. And it's and I think it really makes for a great podcast, and you get to joke about things. So it's three completely different personalities, which is great. And it all just happened, and I hate to use this phrase, organically. But it's a great compliment to each other, and and I really say I enjoy listening to, your podcasts, both of you. And, I kind of look forward to it each week. And
well, thank you, Joel. I like listening to yours too. One of the things I love about yours is just your super long reach of getting people on from everywhere and like all different walks of the industry, and also some really cool industry stalwarts, like some real.
We've been fortunate. Yeah. Well, 30 years of doing it, you get to know some people. I mean, a good example of that is, we've had every time there's a major tournament, I get Keith Wood on.
Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, one of the icons of this industry, and at a time when he's about to, set up for a major championship, PGA championship this year. And, of course, Keith was a student of mine at Rutgers, so I've known him for a long time and seen his career
Super at Quail
development.
Hollow. I don't even know if we said it, but
I
I mean,
didn't say it. I'm sorry, Keith.
yeah, most people know it. But
Quail Hollow. I just assumed everybody knew Keith and Quail Hollow, which is quite honestly one of the coolest venues. I mean, I've been to a lot of these national these tournaments, but it's absolutely one of the most incredible, places to host a tournament. And as a spectator, we all go down there, we hang out at the Hilton, we, have a lot of fun in town in Charlotte, and then jump on the little train and go down to the bus, and it drops us right out front. And it's such a great venue to watch a tournament, especially, a major like the PGA. And it's been a lot of fun, and he's just such a class act, and he's always so gracious to spend time with us. I mean, he doesn't need to spend any time with us at all, but
top rate class act again. Was just last week, saw him at the Carolinas conference, and he came over and to say hi, spend some time, chit chat, gives his best to everybody.
yeah, he's a class act. I mean, he's great.
Yeah.
One of the neat things about what we do is, and I'm sure everybody kind of gets this, but for the most part, the people that we're interviewing, the superintendents, are clients of ours, and people that have become believers of biological soil management. I just did my second podcast with our friend Logan Freeman, who has really swallowed the pill. I mean, I love it. I love listening to him. I love the way he gets excited about it. I mean, you get to work with him probably more than I do, Jack, but he's just, he has seen the transformation on his property over the years, and every year it gets better. And I one of my favorite things with Logan is he sends me out of the blue at strangest times of the week these weird questions. Like he wants to set up a compost tea brewer setup and just take his soil and try to grow his native microbes. That's what's going on in his head, which I think is fascinating. I mean, I just think it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
That he.
Well, that's what we talk about in the Soil Academy. We spent a good bit of time on rhizophagy, right? Which is like
Your favorite word.
yeah, I love it. The whole notion of the plant is farming and colonizing its a microbiome that it wants to use. And like, I think Logan is wanting to do that, in his shop.
Yeah. And he's just all over it. I mean, he's just all over it. And he calls me up with a lot of great things. He goes, "Hey, did you hear this guy say all this stuff is crap?" And like, well, you've been successful with it, Logan, so don't listen to him. It's just kind of funny how that really works.
I just heard from him this weekend after the big Kevin Hicks Twitter post that got a lot of attention this weekend, which was, perfectly timely. What does everyone do on the weekend of Thanksgiving, after like they've digested? Maybe go out and get a Christmas tree, cut, and especially, go cut down your own Christmas tree, those fresh cuts. And so Kevin was all over it and posted the turf talk that we did. That again, the notion is use some C3 in your water well of your fresh cut tree, especially in the first couple days, while it's taking in the most water.
Which came from a client of yours, right? Yeah.
Great, man.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's actually some of the coolest things that we experience.
Came from Chuck. It came from Chuck. Sazerchek. We call him Chuck. So,
a name like that, you'd have to.
So, and yes, another great podcast guest.
It was a great podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's what's so fun about this, dude. Yeah, right. It's all grassroots. It's all kind of coming in organically.
We learn more from them than we teach them, I think.
Absolutely.
And I've been saying that for years. We have done a lot of technology this year. I mean, Kevin, you and I both.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know, Jack, if you did any real technology kind of things, but we got into this pretty heavily. And
I love technology.
I do. I know, but so, Kevin and I were talking beforehand. So I had Kevin Cooper on from Syngenta. I had Kevin Herschel on from Rainmaker, Laura Decker on from Microbiome, Dave Wilbur from Turf Red, you had who, Kevin, from the technology world?
Yeah, I had Ryan Kuster on earlier this summer, and he's with a sprayer company that does a lot of GPS stuff, and that was fascinating.
I
He's
remember that. Yeah.
definitely on the front edge. Maybe not so much technology, but my conversation with the guys at DuraEdge I thought was super interesting.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
great
yeah,
podcast.
they're onto something in golf that I don't
Yeah.
think golf is even aware of
Yeah.
the value right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of meanders through the industry, coming from the sports turf
Yeah.
side of things.
Can you
Spectrum
explain more
Technologies.
on that one? Like, what are they on to in golf?
Well, they built a root zone,
Right.
and it's started in sports turf. They've got a couple of, I guess, truthing grounds, if you will. I think Notre Dame's baseball field, and I know the temporary stop for the what would they be? The Sacramento A's in transition from the Oakland to the Las Vegas A's. They rebuilt that stadium in Sacramento, which is not to get too deep into it, but they they did double duty this year. They hosted both the River Cats, which is a AAA team, and the A's Major League team in the same season. So they basically, instead of having, what is it, 81 home games, they had 162 home games
That's
on
really
that field.
insane.
On the same field.
And they had
That's
budgeted to
insane.
resod twice and did it exactly 0 times.
Wow. So the Dura Edge is getting out into the grassroots zone, not just the
Yeah.
skins.
So what they're doing is they're taking that engineered silt and
Clay.
clay
Yeah.
fraction and
Right.
incorporating it in with a USGA spec sand, which, like we discussed, there's always been a provision for a soil in a root zone as long as it passes spec. But the question has always been, what soil? Like where you are, Jack, or where Joel is compared to where I am, they're totally different. And these guys
And
have an engineered mix.
and how do you blend in? It's very difficult to blend a soil into a sand, and but maybe not so much if it's been manufactured a little bit, if it's
Right,
already
and
been put
they've
together.
been doing the blending based on, is it a mound clay, is it an infield
Right.
mix, is it a home plate? So they've got the blending down. I'm really excited about somebody trying that. I've got a customer, a good friend of mine here in town that's going to do some tee renovations, and I think that's a really good place to
In the
give
golf
it a
course.
shot.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you can maybe lower your management inputs a little bit.
And the
Yeah,
neat
like
thing about that technology is you mix that in with what we're doing with, Renovate and Ecolite
Yes,
and Myco, and it's a killer of a
absolutely.
potential
yeah, we
program.
are soils guys. I mean, we love
Yeah.
that stuff. Like, and
Yeah,
you're right. Like, then you get some biology going. Look out.
I've been talking with them about maybe incorporating some of our stuff into that blend, just
At the
as
time
a
of blending. Yeah.
an addition.
Yeah, I mean it's there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and it's been cool to be able to talk to these guys. I mean, talking to Laura Decker from Microbiome, we've been talking about this internally. How do we quantify and qualify microbiology in the soil? And it's not
Yep.
easy. I mean, I think in Jack's lifetime, maybe not yours or mine, Kevin, but certainly, hopefully, in Jack's, we're going to find a way to quantify microbiology. Right now, it's very, shoddy at best. I mean, but they've
Yep.
done some really very cool things. It's a great podcast. It's worth listening to on the microbiometer. And, it's a handheld device that helps us identify what the potential biology is in the soil profile. And, it's never been good. And it's one of the big controversies. I mean, the industry doesn't really completely embrace biology yet, although that has changed significantly since we started our little project here. But now we're starting to see technologies that can actually show us what is the soil health look like biologically speaking, and that's only going to get better. There's a whole different a bunch of technologies, DNA testing, which has its controversy. You could have DNA that could be in the soil for thousands of years and it would show up as DNA, whereas the microbiometer is testing a little bit differently, and it's cool technology. And I've gotten to talk to, especially since that podcast, I got a lot of people calling me on that one, how excited they are about it. And and starting to play with stuff like that. And it's kind of cool, and it's kind of neat seeing that kind of technology come to fruition. I'm hoping before I'm done that we have some way in which to quantify, how many
I
bugs do
mean,
we have?
let's face it, there's a lot. We're kind of like set in this industry into quantifying and qualifying and
Yeah.
like, run it through this study that shows this one linear notion and that's a lot of the language that we speak in this business, for better or
Yeah.
worse. It's not exactly the way my brain likes to think, but we have to be on board with kind of proving it all
Yeah,
the
I mean,
time.
I talk a lot about generations, and I think your generation thinks that way as a whole. They want to see, they want to see a dynamic approach as opposed to a linear approach, and that's been the problem with soil biology is that it's a very dynamic approach, and it's very hard to quantify because it's not straight line. It's expanding, it goes out this way instead
Yeah, I
of
love that part of
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I do too, but I can see why a researcher would really struggle with this because it's hard to really grasp. It's not linear, so if you can't reduce it down to this one little thing, is there truth to it? Of course there is, and we know that.
Yeah.
And if you read the international literature on biology, it's just fascinating what's going on. I mean, I keep sending you guys all these crazy
Yeah.
things that I read, and
Link,
reading some of that stuff blows my mind.
LinkedIn
Yeah.
is a pretty good resource for
Yeah, that's
for
where I'm
some of
getting it.
those
Yeah.
international researchers and writers, and some of that stuff is it's things we've known about maybe,
Yeah.
but it's definitely hitting more of the mainstream, and I find it kind of ironic that where a portion of the industry is trying to distill down to, well, you only need this one nutrient, or you only
Right.
need this one thing. And yet, even if it were only nitrogen, it's still reliant upon biology to make it available to
Yeah,
the
the
plant.
rest of it.
Bingo.
That's what I love about that microbiometer. When I first saw that at a conference, an eco ag
At Acres,
conference.
you and I went to it. That's where we
Well, it
first
was
saw them.
I actually stumbled on it in
Oh, before
Sacramento
that. Yeah, no, I remember
um,
that. Sorry.
at the Western Eco Ag
Yeah.
conference. But what I like about that is, we're trying to help people introduce or foster better biology in the
Foster is
soil.
a good word.
But at the end of the day, I don't know that a practitioner in the field necessarily needs to know that he's got 10 million units of this particular bacteria. Are we moving the needle? And that's what
That's
I love
exactly right.
about the microbiometer is it's showing us, hey, if we've made a change with this input or this cultural practice, did it move the needle? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Pretty
It's the
simple.
trend.
Yeah.
And
Great.
it can go in either direction. Did I do
Right.
this and all of a sudden I lost half my
Yep.
biology? I mean,
I
that's
love that. And obviously all that stuff you know, has a grain of salt with it as far as,
of
what are the
course.
weather conditions, what, temperatures, all that stuff plays a role. But if you're consistent with it, and the point of entry is very cost effective. I mean,
It's
it's
Yeah.
not
almost
an
as simple as
expensive
a
test
moisture
kit.
meter, like
I-
as a
It
simple
is.
TDR, like
Yep.
yeah.
that.
You're
And
right.
did I I did something? Was there a response? Like, is
Yes.
it yes or no? It's like pass fail almost, and
Yep.
that's great. That's a good thing.
It's
Um,
funny when that one came out, I got a lot of calls on guys saying, "Well, what happens if you put down pesticides?" I'm like, you kill microbes, but if you don't
Right.
promote them, you're going to just constantly be going backwards. At least this way we can take, a couple steps forward and maybe only a half a step backwards.
Yeah. I don't think any of us would acknowledge or would claim that pesticides aren't going to be a part of
Right.
fine turf management. We're trying to minimize that and reallocate
And
maybe
keep
some of those
biology
resources.
alive.
Yeah, but by
You know.
keeping biology alive, my assumption is you'll have less dependence on the chemicals.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I will take with me as I move on and you guys continue to take on. But we as a team have made that change. I mean, we really have brought to the forefront this concept of what soil biology can do. And then, we've seen through the podcast and through everything else we've done all of these guys coming out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I've been doing that. I'm seeing this and I'm seeing that and all these great things. And I'm not putting down as much water. I'm not putting down as much fertilizer. I've done all these great things, and I'm a believer. And it's like, oh, wow, this really does work. This is great.
It really works well.
But yeah,
it works well. And I love saying it. And C3 was kind of that boiled down essence, like of something that works really well that you can use often and get that response. Like,
yeah, which is why we put it into our homeowner line as like almost the sole product, and it has become hands down the biggest product line that we ever have. I mean, one thing I was thinking of when you were talking about the LinkedIn stuff, I really wish I could have, seen Jerry Brunetti's face, because he had to dig and hunt and really search for these kind of breakthroughs, and he loved that. He devoured that kind of information, and then he would take it and just run with it. And I'm like, Jerry, where are you going? What ball are you playing with here? It's like it was so out there that I'm like, but then you'd kind of think through it and process through it, and you realize, oh, he's definitely onto something. He would catch on to something like that. But that's kind of what I'm doing with some of these LinkedIn guys that I've been sending you guys on a fairly regular basis, because I just find it fascinating, and it makes sense if you
it's
think
great material, man.
Yeah,
It's great.
it's really great material.
Yeah, would Jerry's brain have just exploded with all the information, all the resources that are available now compared to when he was
Oh, I know.
in the thick of it?
I think of that all the time, because
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what he where he gained his information is he traveled a lot and went to a lot of conferences, weird conferences, all the
Right.
the really dark room conferences, and guys coming out that most people would just think are complete quacks, and some of them ended up being complete quacks, quite honestly. But Alan Savory, who was one of my favorite authors and subject, I mean, this guy took desert soils and turned them into fertile soils, and can feed thousands of people on small acreage now, where they were living in the deserts and there was nothing there. I mean,
Yeah.
to see that kind of stuff, and this was 20 years ago, and Jerry was really taking what he was talking about and running with it. Now you see the same conversation all over the place on.
Well, okay. So what was that stuff that Al was doing? What was interesting
He
about
was
it?
growing soil. I mean, that's kind of what, when
Yes.
Kevin and I went to Acres last year. I mean, this is what every guy came up and said, we're growing soil. I mean, so he
I love
basically just was, putting cover crops back down into the soil and letting the soil become fertile. And not in his world, now he's talking about Africa and deserted soils, or semi-desert soils in Africa, semi-arid soils. And not only was he changing the soils, but he was changing the climate, because when you change the soil, now you start to create an ecosystem that brings more rain, and it starts to cycle. And he changed territories. He changed, he's got a number of really good books and he's such a great speaker, and you can follow him on social media as well. But Alan Savory is just a fascinating creature. I got to meet him once with Jerry at a conference. I think it was Acres many, many years ago, and he spoke, and he's fascinating. I mean, but that's the kind of people that Jerry found, and was able to just get excited about, and then he would keep digging deeper and deeper. But Kevin, you remember we went to Acres, and every farmer after farmer just got up there and talked about how they took their 2 inches of topsoil and grew it to 6 inches in a matter of 3 years.
I'm
And then
growing soil,
growing-
and I hear grass growers talk about it more and more now
Yeah.
too, like using that exact term.
Yeah.
I've really gotten the idea that really what I'm supposed to be doing is growing dirt, more than growing grass. I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Man,
You know
think
what's
about it.
what's interesting about the farmer's perspective, and I think we can maybe extrapolate from it in the turf industry, but the component that I always find the most interesting, and most of the regenerative farmers will say it's been the linchpin in building soil, is grazing,
Yeah.
and having animals on their land, and how that whole system tends to churn and mix and add fertilizer, and cultivation for
Yeah.
us.
Well, I
Is
don't know
that.
if you guys are aware, but animal manure is a great fertilizer.
I've heard that chicken shit in
No
particular.
shit.
No shit. Yeah, exactly. That's what Alan Savory talks about is he talks about the overgrazing, and that was what was happening
Yeah.
because they were overgrazing. But then, you get a guy like Joel Salatin in Virginia who talks about rotational grazing. I mean, this was a relatively new concept 10, 15 years ago, and farmers are now, even small productive farmers are taking acre plots and rotating the animals every day. So the cows come in, they eat the grass down, they hoof it and aerate it, they
Yep.
drop manure, and then they move them to the next section of that property. And then the chickens come in behind it and poke at all the bugs and clean everything up. And then by the time that cow gets back up, the grass is back up to 6, 7 inches, and it's a perfect system that completely grows soil.
And I like then what you said too, just you passed over it quick, but it then changes the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It changes the
Right.
air, so because now you have a whole section of land that is respiring
It's
and
respiring.
transpiring, so like it's putting moisture from the ground, moving it up into the air and exchanging like that.
Creating
Like,
clouds,
Capturing carbon.
and then the
yeah.
clouds start to drop the water again. So
Yeah, and you feel that difference. Like that's we all know as people, like we want to be around that,
Yeah.
It's so special.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just blown away.
Gabe Brown, who I've been promising to get on this podcast, who's the feature farmer on Kiss the Ground, same thing. He started growing soil, and the best thing about that movie, Kiss the Ground, and if somebody hasn't seen Kiss the Ground, you should see it. The best scene in that is when he stood on the line of his farm to the next door neighbor, and this is up in a semi-arid part of the country, and up by you, Kevin, and his property was rich and dense and green, and the guy next to him was dirt brown.
Yep.
I mean, it was striking the difference. And this isn't AI. This was his farm, and we've seen it. And Joel Salatin is the same way. He would get criticized by people thought he was stealing water. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I have organic matter in my profile that goes back to it. And it go for me. One of my favorite podcasts this year was a guy I met at one of the academies, and I was talking about. And you guys have all seen the picture probably 100 times because I show the same one over and over again. What I call my thatch cake, and a guy named Zach Ramey. And Zach came up to me after the academy, and a relatively young superintendent came up to me and said, I've seen exactly what he'd been following what we were saying. And he goes, I've seen this. And he brought pictures up of where he had the layers. And after 2 years of managing a soil, better, properly, that those layers were gone. And he was just listening to what I was saying. It's the first time he'd been to an academy, and where I indoctrinate people, I've heard, and he was listening to this, and he was so excited because he thought he actually thought, I think he thought something was wrong, but he saw that the change was happening, and he was building deeper and better soils. And that kind of stuff is why I do this. That's what keeps me 35, 7, 8, 10, whatever the years that I've been doing this in doing this, because when you see a guy's eyes light up like that and you see him make a change and his life is better, his home, his life is better, he gets home earlier, he doesn't kick the dog anymore. I mean, it's just a real satisfaction to see all that. And we've all seen it,
Yeah, it is a wonderful thing. The other and the podcast captures those stories now,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Yeah.
We have it.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, your favorite podcast of the year? Any ideas? I mean, there's probably a whole bunch.
Well, besides the ones I mentioned, I mean, there's still so much construction going on. I love doing those, and
Yeah.
kind of getting into superintendents' heads to maybe to help others that are diving into that, to avoid some of the pitfalls or some of the, gosh, if I would have done this, it would have been better. Charlie Aubrey, who was an intern of mine back in I think 2008, he's at Eastlake now and customer of Jack's, but he did a complete renovation in 11 months. That was pretty amazing. And I knew it was a tight timeline, but once I got him on the podcast, I was just kind of blown away that you could do that scope of a project in that short a period of time.
Charlie also was like the first guy, I think and we say this a lot, right? But I honestly think he was the first guy to use EarthWorks products through the dry jack machine
Mm,
at East Lake. That was something that he and Ralph like developed a while, 10 years ago, a
yeah.
while ago. Um, and that's been like a staple for them, and has now become stable for a lot of people. It's gone really well.
Yeah.
So but yeah, that is amazing, the amount of work that they got done so quickly.
Yeah, just to have all your ducks in a row to pull that off is
How
takes
do you do that?
an enormous amount of coordination and communication, and he underscored all of that, just how well everybody worked together, and you get one hiccup in that time frame and you're done. So that was a good one. That one I enjoyed a lot. But I do like the technology, Joel, to kind of
Yeah.
kind of reiterate what you said. It's interesting.
And there's a lot of it, and
Yeah.
we've been able to get, these folks on, I love what Dave Wilbur is one of our most popular and favorite guests. And, we've had him on recently a lot more than usual because he's been working with this new system, the turf rat. You had him on for construction, but I've had him on twice this year talking about his turf rat system, which
Yep.
is fascinating. I mean, the fact that you could get that kind of, photograph. Well, I guess it's not photographic, but that kind of data that shows you where moisture is, and
Yeah.
and it's fun. I talk to Dave, frequently, and talk to him a lot before the podcast, and it's just he's you could see his excitement about how a technology like that can change somebody's perspective on things.
Yep.
And and technology in our industry is slow to, be adapted. But, a lot of these things, that we've talked about are probably, very early adoption kind of things. But it's kind of cool to watch it and see it come to fruition, which is kind of fun. One of the podcasts that I've had Tyler Bloom on a number of times, and Jack, you and I both knew Tyler when he was a superintendent, and I think he would be okay with me saying this, at a dog track in Aberdeen, Maryland. I mean, it was really, not a great place, but he's really, made a lot of changes. I mean, his business has been very fascinating, and he started out by trying to bring people together as labor force, and now he's really changed his thing, and I think a lot of people are sitting up and taking a listen to what he's doing.
Oh, he gets a lot of work done for a lot of people. Like,
Yeah, it's been
the
great.
whole labor thing has been
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's carved out a cool niche for the industry for
He
sure.
definitely
exactly.
has.
And it's been cool from our perspective because we had him on very early on the podcast before
Well,
anybody really
he
knew
was
what
a
he
very happy EarthWorks customer,
Yes, he
That's
was.
like he's another guy like you mentioned, like that saw the products work, and his life got better. Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
liked this stuff.
Wow, this is easy. I can. So our biggest our favorite our biggest podcast that we get the biggest views, of course, is Lawrence, our chemist, and he's such a trip. He's just an anomaly to me because he's so brilliant, and but he's actually very funny, and but he's been good. So I think we did. I don't know how many we did. I know we recently did one on calcium, which was a response to comments made in the industry, which were, of course, ridiculous about how ammonium sulfate, it doesn't do anything. And of course, I was referring to how ammonium sulfate can release calcium. So he said, Lawrence, can you come on and give us the scientific perspective
Right.
of what this is really all about? And of course, Lawrence, you guys know Lawrence well, but he spent lots of time doing some homework, and he came out, guns a blaring, and is like, of course it does. I mean, this is a given in the industry, and for somebody to come out and say, "Oh, that doesn't do anything," and just, it just blows my mind. So I love bringing him in to, kind of shut down some of the silliness
The
of
noise.
the noise. Yeah, the noise. the big noise. But he also talks about soil biology, and it's kind of cool. We did a whole podcast earlier this year on soil microbiology, and we're going to probably do something with him soon on specifically on trace elements because he's really gotten down this road. And you guys have heard some of this about how, trace elements are so important. And what's really cool is when I work with him on formulation. Oh, we got to get selenium in there. We're going to get, I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what the hell this shit is. And he goes into it in great detail. Well, that's the key that opens the door for this, that kind of lets this flow. And it's like, wow, who would have known, But
It's all organized kind of on the periodic table, and he goes over that quite a bit, like how, you can, when you look down the column, like you can kind of you could substitute or rather biological systems often substitute, in that column of elements like for their functions.
I've learned more about that table in the few months that I've talked to him about than I did in college and high school. And not that I paid a lot of attention in chemistry in those years, but it's just a big chart and you have to remember the letters. And I'm like, I never, I mean, when he goes through it and shows us, see this line here, they are all related. This can substitute. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I should probably admit that on the podcast, should I? But.
Well, and then of course his other bent is always balancing, and never, even when you're trying to push one thing or another, never over pushing it to throw the entire system at a homeostasis because then it's like an energy game. Like how much am I going to deplete energy out of the system to pull it back into balance? And
what does he say is the biggest culprit in the industry of that?
I think ammonium sulfate was
iron.
it? Iron. Oh yeah, iron. Yeah.
And how much it disrupts.
Another big 3+ ion. Yeah. Another.
It shuts down all the uptake of the other traces. I mean, that's the whole eco-adaptive technology. And you think about what we learned in college, N, P, and K, really, right? We learned 3 elements. And that's exactly what he's trying to say is the problem is that, not that you don't want or need N, P, and K, but if you only are doing nitrogen or lots of potassium or lots of calcium, you see all sorts of imbalances in the uptake of other elements. So, I mean,
I don't know exactly what happened with the college thing, but like I do remember that, they kind of take all this stuff that we talk about and lump it into like, well, all that's a given, like all that's a given. So we're not even going to talk about it. And then let's spend the next 4 years and thousands of hours talking about this 10% little sliver that like we can, we can prove that we can manipulate. And we won't talk about the 90% of the important stuff because we'll just assume it's a given. And it's like, well, it's not always a given, first of all. And like, if we can make improvement in that 90%, and that carries 90% of the weight of the whole system, why aren't we focusing on it and learning about it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's starting to happen though.
Yeah, I agree.
You listen to regenerative agriculture and, and even a lot of people in our industry now are starting to really go down this road pretty aggressively. And, the NPKers and, the dinosaurs are starting to, I mean, I think the majority of superintendents listen to that kind of stuff and say, yeah, that's probably not really the truth anymore, is it?
Exactly.
Which is kind of crazy.
And it's not a given in our constructed, worlds. Like
you got sand. Yeah, it's not even a real soil. It's not It's hard to keep biology alive in sand. For God.
I mean, you even have lawns. You even have home lawns on native soil, it's not exactly natural, So like it takes a little manipulation. That's it.
But it was cool watching him build that whole eco-adaptive concept. And, the first thing that he ever did for us was K-Vantage, which has become our rising star. And man, that thing kicks. It
kicks butt.
You can really see it in the soil. You can really see it in tissue testing. And And guys are just saying, yeah, this thing is, I'm going to have it in all my sprays.
Well, that's one that I can tell you, you guys and the listener to keep pay attention on from coming from the EarthWorks podcast, because I'm trying to deep dive on K-Vantage a little bit harder, because I did a number of soil tests like in the last, maybe September through now, that I'm like, your K is super strong, like, or it's consistently 15, 20 parts per million across the board. And like, I don't see that all the time. I've been doing soil tests a long time. It's not, especially in the second half of the year, the K levels really dip. But and each time it comes back, it's like, well, I've been real consistent with K-Vantage this year. The only change is I've been consistent with K-Vantage this year. It's like, oh, it happened like 3 times in the last 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Like, and I think there's that product's, there's a lot going on with that product.
Eco-adaptive, man.
I remember when Lawrence was, I don't know if you guys recall this, when he was working on development of the product and he was treating his apple trees. Remember what he said about that?
Yes.
That the tissue was showing really, really high saturation of
potassium
compared to, his untreated
and saved
plots.
the apple, the apple tree was not productive.
That's right.
That's right.
Maybe we should get out of this turf industry and get into fruit development and food,
Well, I mean, honestly, we could talk about all the stuff that we are doing that's not turf. Like, one of my favorite podcasts from the last year was the podcast I did with Bobby Solar, our tree care correspondent.
That was a masterful segue, Jack. That was absolutely
well done.
Top drawer.
Wow. Yeah. We call you the king of segues, by the way. I don't know.
That was great.
I've been in the podcast game for a while. So.
But talk about that, because that was a great podcast. And Bobby's been with us for a long time. And he's shown, that one picture that we show of that saved holly tree from the tree, that was Bobby. I always thought C3 was great. When I saw him talk about it and say, look what it did to this tree, I'm like, well, he's been using that picture.
Yeah, the podcast that we did a couple months ago, maybe it was August, but it was he went over basically like 2 different case studies in depth, a Dutch elm disease and another one. But anyway, 2 diseases that it was like two different trees were going south hard, had tried things for about 2 seasons, and came in with kind of the one was he called the Bobby's blend, which was like a whole bunch of things thrown together, a whole bunch of EarthWorks products thrown together. K-Vantage was in that mix as well. C3 is his go-to. The other was just C3. And no, Bobby's doing a bunch of great work, and also like exploring this whole, really proving this plant healthcare thing for us, really showing what you can get done with the EarthWorks products in the plant healthcare realm. And on the nursery side of things, I did a podcast with Chesapeake Grounds owner Mike Clifton, and that was like he has a nursery for, he's a grounds management company that takes care of commercial properties, apartment buildings, like nice office complexes, big campus sort of stuff. So a lot of his business is annuals, and he in the last few years has started growing his own annuals. So like now he's growing like 10,000 annuals a year, and uses Myco and Renovate and C3 and K-Vantage and Protein Plus, and like loves the products.
And it's probably more profitable.
Immensely more profitable because he's growing his own, but also then like he's growing he's starting to become a nursery, like he's growing desirable plants for his friends. And the biggest thing that he said, the biggest thing that he said is the speed at which he can grow a full, like, I guess they're like 5-inch pots maybe, that he's plugging in the begonias when he's wanting to plug them in May. how quickly he can grow that begonia, and then the most important thing is how successful the begonia is in the ground. Like you can put it
Mhm.
in the lousiest soil and it still thrives. Like so
And it's hard to pull out at the end of the season because the
exactly
roots are so damn long.
exactly. That's great. It's great. I love that stuff.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Bobby, though, is he had that big ass beard for the longest time. And you remember the first podcast he did with him? He had his
Yes.
microphone set right up there and it kept brushing up against the beard the whole,
Yeah.
whole time. And
Yeah.
Mike Small, our editor, is going on, what is that noise? What
Oh,
the
He's like Red Santa.
yeah, exactly. But man,
exactly.
he's a thinker. That's the coolest thing about
Yeah.
Bobby is that he thinks and he's willing to take risks and I mean he's out there every day, so he's doing his own research and seeing it's coming to fruition, as so many of the guys that we have on our podcast that
Hmm.
I had Colin Engstrom on he's
yeah.
out of Bozeman, Montana, and he came out of the finance world, and so he looked at his lawn care company totally differently. He hadn't grown it from a truck and a trailer sort of
Pickup
scene
truck,
like
yeah.
most do. Um, and I'm going to have him back on. He actually requested to get back on because
Yeah.
he's
Cool.
moving 100% of his business to organic based offering, strictly because he was looking at how his trucks were moving, and they were crossing paths all the time between the conventional program and the organic program. Profits were higher on the organic side. It's growing at a much faster pace than the rest of his business. So he said, beginning of this year, he said, next year I'm moving everything to organic based. He says I may lose a small percentage on the front end, but I'll gain it all back,
That's
in a short
And he's
period
more
period of
profitable. I
time.
mean, that's a business. So, I mean, you got to
Yeah,
look at the numbers and it's all about profit. But the coolest thing about what you told us about him was his technicians were realizing that, hey,
yep,
the lawns that are doing the best are on that program.
that's
And,
right.
and
That's right.
these are guys that, are out there every day and they see it every day and they're like, yeah, there's no question this thing is much
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
That's
and
cool.
And that's a tough environment. People that haven't spent time out west, Bozeman's very dry, very high altitude. It's a pretty punishing environment for both plants and turf. And
sure.
he's seen the return definitely on that investment.
Well, yeah, and it'll only get more and more profitable
That's
every,
right,
right? Because what we're
because his
talking
inputs
about,
will start dropping.
growing soil, like
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
what we do.
We
So,
gotta we gotta get these guys on. You should get them on because
Yeah.
that industry is really prime for doing what we do. And I don't say this necessarily from trying to sell product, but it's going to be the success of their industry. I mean, the guys that don't go down that road are not going to survive because
Yep.
it saves them water. It saves them inputs. And their big fear is that first of all, they look at price per bag, but they also look at, retention. And, the retention rates are higher, but lawn care, you always are losing people. So they put
But
it
the
in
thing that
investment.
that industry has that golf doesn't is a demand for it.
Yeah.
The consumer is demanding an organic based offering. So why can't you make that a value add
Right.
as an operator? Make it a value add, charge a little bit extra, and like Jack said, increase your profits and deliver what the market is demanding in the first place.
And it makes sense. I mean, it really
Yeah,
does make sense. I mean, it's a business. I love doing academies for lawn care people because now we're talking to business people. Now
right.
we're talking to people who it's their money that's on the line, and they're going to make decisions based on a business decision as opposed to maybe an agronomic decision or programming decision. But and the guys that are willing to take the risk and move forward. And I think if you look at the traditional bell curves, we're past the early adapters. We're up into at the higher level of that bell curve. More and more lawn care companies are starting to go down this road. And you keep using the word organic based. This is not organic lawn care. This is
Right.
carbon based fertility in a
Yeah.
lawn care program. and they're still using some pesticides. They're still, knocking out some weeds. But even when they knock out their weeds, they find that it's not as prolific in the better soils as it is in some of the crappy old soils, especially in a place
Correct.
like Bozeman.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. We gotta, it's just a lot of fun talking to these guys.
Yep.
So, so Jack, what was your favorite podcast of the year? You had some good ones.
Yeah, I mean those ones mentioned, I really enjoyed. But I had a really homecoming sort of time sitting down with Chassard from Lehigh Country Club, and I'm trying to think when that was. It was in the early spring
Yeah.
of this past year, and like we just had a really great chat, and then actually, and he kind of, well, I worked for him, and I grew up less than a mile from that golf shop, and so he has such a passion for the property, for
Yeah.
Lehigh Country Club,
He's been there for 420 years, for God's sake. I mean, I think he was born on that property.
And they have a championships tour coming
Yeah. How
for
cool is that?
3 years in a row, starting in September. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he's done such great work in terms of classical restoration. And he really embraces Poa annua. And
He grows it.
yeah, I love it. It's so cool. He's got the new Pennsylvania Poa from seed. He's got a couple of greens that a putting green that he resurfaced with it and everything. So like anyway, that chat was great. But and then just last week at the Carolinas Turf Conference, Guy Cipriano from Golf Course Industry came to the booth to say, "Hey Jack, hey, good to see you. I want to tell you I really enjoyed the podcast with John Chassard, and we were out kind of cruising around working. They had met with you. I know they were just, they were out working and meeting some of their customers and some of the golf courses, playing some golf, touring around. And he said, I put on your podcast, in the morning when we were driving the hour and a half from Philadelphia or from Wilmington up to Allentown, to Emmaus. And he was like, it was just really great and fun to listen to, and I was well informed to go in and really make the most of the time that I had there, because
Nice.
so which was really cool. I took it as a great compliment from a media guy, a guy that does media, legit.
Yeah.
That we're here just trying to have fun and
Yeah.
and put it out there. So anyway, that was cool, and I really did like that talk. Along those same lines, and this has happened a couple times, that I get the feedback of, hey, from assistants, hey, I interviewed with my man here, my new boss, but before the interview, I was able to listen to the podcast, and I got a sense of the guy before the sit down. I was and thank you so much. I really appreciate that you guys do this.
That's one of the strong. I say this to a lot of guys. If there's a podcast out there, ours or anybody's, listen to it. If you're going to interview with a guy, I mean, what better way to get a feel for who he is?
Yep.
What a great and the same thing with I've gotten a lot of young superintendents and even some assistants on, and it's a great resume builder. I mean, when you go to look for a new job, share with them the podcast that you did with us or whoever it could. Now there's 100,000 podcasts in our industry, but that's a great way to build your resume and have a portfolio of stuff that you can share.
It sure is.
Or find from stuff. So, we're doing a service here. We're not just sitting there bullshitting with people. This is a service process that we're helping guys out with. What else did you like, Jack? I loved your one with Zach from the park.
Oh yeah, so that was the most recent. Yeah, we got a great conversation with Zach Holm from Central Park, and there's going to be more from him, kind of tales from the park. He's a guy that they are completely limited in what they can use at Central Park. Zero pesticides, zero. So and they put out a great product. Like they grow remarkable athletic fields and lawns that are you that talk about handling use, like so, and he gets it done without any pesticide. So, but we're gonna have more chats from him. I really like that talk. I love the talk with Jack Meyer at Maxon. Yeah,
That was your great opening.
that was the great. Well, look for more.
Wait, what? Two jacks high or no? What did you say? Two jacks?
Jacks are better trips to win. Yeah, yeah. That's just a little poker terms for you.
Just a little throw out there.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
So what's next year? What
I don't
do
know.
we have a theme for next year?
Yeah, well, more. Well, we'll in early March we're going to hit 300 podcasts. I mean, the nice thing about us, and this is something that Pete McCormick at TurfNet says to me all the time because he does some podcasts, and what he said to us consistently is that you guys constantly put out good material. I mean, and you're doing it weekly. Every Thursday, this thing hits the air, and it's consistent, and people can rely on it. And I love the fact that there's three of us doing it, and each one of us is different and provides a different perspective and a different angle.
And we've mentioned them here and there, but that's a major testament to our off the air guy, Mike Small. Our media guy that gets it all done, puts it together, and makes these. You say Kevin's best voice in podcasting. Like Mike really focuses on sound and makes these things.
He fixes us a lot.
Yeah, he makes these things sound really good. And yeah, so and he gets.
Now that you say that, I'm checking to make sure. Oops, I just my microphone is actually on right. I just muted myself accidentally.
Sorry, Mike. Can't fix that.
Yeah, I can't fix that. Don't worry about that one, Mike. But yeah, he'll come back to me and says, Joel, you didn't have the microphone on. Oh, darn it.
Oh man.
Yeah, but
I mean, they all sound they sound great. We put out, and you're right. Like we work on putting these out, and so the question was what to look forward to coming up. I said I'm trying to do a deep dive on and get more K-Vantage, kind of learn more about that product and talk about it. But then also I've got a good customer friend, that Larry Newman, that I'd like to have on the podcast soon. That he's
doing. Was he on Seinfeld? No, somebody else.
That's Larry and Newman.
Oh, okay.
No, but Larry builds roadsides. He works with the DOT. And is a establishment, like he does civil engineering stuff, really, and grounds establishment, and has designed a really cool study that's actually happening right now with a couple 1 acre plots of a couple different blends of EarthWorks input, and some more standard controls. And so there's going to be a lot to talk about there. So we're going to review that case study when it's finished.
Cool. What do you want to see, Kev?
I'm going to focus this year on I've got at least a handful, if not more, guests in the queue. I want to focus on legacy.
Oh, I like that.
I mean, one in particular, Jeff Gullickson. You guys may not know that name, but you know what his legacy is. He started First Green, and he's right here in Spokane.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was your way.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit down with him and maybe get his partner in crime, Steve Keeley, involved as well, and just talk about the legacy of that program and
what a great program for this.
What it's done. But I'm kind of at the stage in my career where I'm thinking about that, and you guys, I'm sure, do the same thing when you hear about a superintendent that retires.
Yeah,
like legitimately retires without being retired.
Yeah,
I celebrate those things, and I think it's really cool.
You mean retires on their own?
Yeah, right. But
unlike your retirement.
But there's a lot of folks that have, the Keith Woods of the world, some of my mentors that have left a lasting legacy in the industry, and I love hearing those stories. And it should be a point of pride for people to impart what they know on the next generation of turf managers, and I kind of want to highlight that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, there's so many good stories that can be, told
Yeah.
kind of a thing. I mean, I'd love to see more lawn care and some different diversity within the industry. I'd like to get some of these sustainable agriculture guys on. I'm going to reach out to a couple of them and see if we can get these guys to tell the stories that might be related, but in a different world. And when you start to think about what they're doing and what we're doing, it's very similar. I mean, it's
It is.
really very similar. And when you and I sat down at Acres and listened to those farmers talk about growing soils, I mean, you can learn a lot from that in the turf industry, or in sports turf, or in lawn care, or any of these industries that we're, into. And I think we can get, if we can help people discover a better way to do something, and maybe a different way to do something, or just open up their mind, or just to get them to think a little bit about, hey, maybe that makes some sense.
Yeah.
I love watching the light bulbs go off,
Hmm.
and seeing that kind of stuff go on. And I think we've done a really, really good job over 286 podcasts of doing this, and it's been consistent, which is good. So
I've got a fellow board member on the Soil Conservation District board that he's fourth generation farmer in this area in our county, but he's the first one to break ranks from the conventional agriculture world. And you talked about Gabe Brown and his neighbor. He actually, this fellow's name is John Mobbs. His neighbor came across the fence and said, "Hey, I've been watching you for the last, 10 years, let's say, whatever it was." And he's a super passionate guy. He loves telling the story, but he says, "I've been watching what you've been doing. I want you to manage my farm now like that." Because he says, my kids aren't interested. Like John's got two more generations behind him ready to take over the farm.
yeah.
How many times do we hear that story? Almost
Can I
never.
request that you get John on the
Yeah,
first
that would
one?
be
I will. No, he's
Okay.
agreed to it. We need to take some time this winter and get
What
him
you
on.
just said though was really very cool, is that in that world, in the farming community, they're losing, generations don't want to do this.
And there's a succession plan when they see there's hope.
When there's hope and
Yep.
it changes, and they're excited about it.
Yep.
And I mean, Jerry used to always say, there's always going to be money in food. And that's why I mean, he wasn't a big fan of this whole side of our industry, of our business. He stayed on the farming side, but he goes, there was always going to be, you can always make a living providing food for people, because people are always going to need food. They may not always
Yep.
need a golf course, but to see a generational change like that, where the next generation is excited and passionate, and like, yeah, I could do this. That's cool. But yeah, you definitely need to get him on, dude.
Yeah, I will. I
You know.
will. He's agreed to it. We just need to sit down.
Along those lines, I think in the new world of AI and all that stuff, there's always going to be a need for recreation.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And like
And community.
there's actually might be more time for recreation and
Yeah.
community in the new world. Like,
Yeah.
so I think, our thing that we all do together is always been important, and is only gaining and increasing importance.
Well, I mean, and I don't mean to diminish any of that. I mean, that's not where I was trying to go with the food comment. But
No, I
think
know.
about it. What we're doing is we're providing green spaces and open spaces. I mean,
Right.
what that does to a community is substantial.
Mhm.
It brings oxygen into the environment. It brings green spaces. It's a place for wildlife to still have a place to, habitat. And
Yeah,
it's,
way beyond the recreational component.
oh
of
yeah,
it,
I mean,
right.
it's really quite amazing. It really
Right, but also humans have kids, like that's what
They do?
humans do. Yeah, that's what they do, and like kids need things something to do and to be active, and that's something that we do, and humans need to be active,
Yeah.
and it's a wonderful thing.
Kevin, you probably would relate to this. I was with my family. My siblings are 7 and 5 years older than me at Thanksgiving, and we were watching some of the reels going around about what we did when in the 70s. When I was a kid, we drank from a hose. You know,
Yes.
my favorite was, do you remember the merry-go-round things that you would
Oh,
spin
yeah.
it around and you would just hold on and then
Those that
finally let go?
survived are
And
now.
yeah, and the ones that survived have made it through. And it's like,
Yeah.
we didn't sit inside and
Love
watch
it.
TV and play with the little box, and,
Yeah.
and we'd ride our bike from, we'd leave the house at early in the morning, and as long as we were home by the time the street lights came on, mom wouldn't yell at us. They had no idea where we were, and
Mm-mm.
they no
Didn't
idea.
really care either, did they?
Didn't care. Didn't want us there. I mean, it
I
was
grew
like,
up in tornado country, so that was the
oh
signal.
boy.
You always hear that the signal was when the street light came on, you better beat feet home. But for us, 6 p.m. was when the tornado siren went off at the local fire station, and that meant you better get your butt home
Oh,
because it's
wow.
dinner time.
And that's all
So
we needed to know. That was
yeah,
all we needed
exactly.
to know. Our parents didn't hover over us. They didn't
No.
follow us. They didn't watch us walk out the house or any of
Yeah,
that.
but I've seen that same reel, and the back half of that reel is that, like, back in the 70s, they would have to put a commercial on TV at 10 p.m., asking everyone if they knew where their children were.
Did the kids come home yet?
You remember, people, that you have children. Do you
Yeah.
know where they
What?
are?
Hold on, put that cocktail down and go find the kids.
Exactly.
That's pretty much how we grew up.
Well, I need
Hopefully-
another pack of Benson and Hedges anyway.
that was my mom's favorite. Yeah, that's exactly right. So they became too expensive and they went to the generics. That was very funny. All right, folks. On that, I think we've done enough for one day, but that's a great way to end this. Maybe we'll do a podcast just on the
This
generation.
is like a Seinfeld episode, a show about nothing, pretty much.
A show of nothing.
This was fun.
But we had a lot of good conversation. So this is 387. So, or excuse me, 287. So, like I said, by early March, we'll hit 300, which is a huge milestone. How many did, who was the guy that just retired? Your buddy, the podcast?
Oh, Marin.
Merritt did 600.
No, we did 1,600.
16 hours. So he was on for what, 20
Well,
years?
he did 2 episodes a week.
I didn't realize
So
that.
his pace was faster.
Yeah. And
But he
probably-
started in 2009. So
wow.
Wow.
Can't even imagine. But thank you both for doing this little project. I think it's been wonderful as a whole for not only our business, but I think for the industry. I think a lot of people have gotten. I mean, Jack, you and I were that's Jack Higgins. I listen to that voice all the time. I watched your head just go like this.
That was fun,
It was
yeah.
hysterical. But yeah, it's always been fun to get recognized. And, guys, the whole point of this was, if somebody could listen to one of our podcasts and take one little tidbit out of it that might make their operation a little smoother or a little easier, that's what we've been trying to do. And I think we've been very successful at that. So
Yeah.
my hat's off to the both of you. I hope you guys continue this long after I'm no longer. But
We're not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. But I think it's been good. So thank you so much. And folks, if you aren't subscribing to the EarthWorks podcast, you get to listen to the three of us all the time if you would like, and we can tell you who's going to come on and when and all that stuff, and send you a little announcement. So thank you, gents. We will see you at the big Christmas party on Thursday of this week, and see off our dear friend Lisa Kiefer's moving on to a different part of her life. So a little sad, but it'll be fun. So we'll
It'll be fun.
Yep.
Use C3 in your Christmas trees, everybody.
Yeah.
artificial and
We'll
real.
attach a link to that video, right? We
There you
need to
go.
start
Yes, we will.
attaching links to those.
Yes.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
That is a good one. Thanks, guys.
All right.
right.
Thank you.